In business, we are confronted with both moral and legal questions. Those that choose to do the right thing are not always noticed. Those who choose to work outside the boundaries of law and ethics are well known. Welcome to BUL3130 Business Law and Ethics. Professor Thornton will be here momentarily.
This week we begin our study into contracts. One of the most important parts of what you can learn through this class, especially if you plan to go into business, which I'm assuming most of you will in some form or another, is the importance of contracts. We run into them all the time. Contracts are something we experience almost a daily basis. We experience contracts. If you go shopping, you experience a contract. If you go out to eat, you experience a contract. If you're working within the business world, sometimes you will enter into contracts for services you need or for services you render. So contracts are part of our daily life. And in the business world, they're part of how we function. We need contracts there, and we need contract law to make sure that businesses can function in the way they need to. All right. All right. So it's impossible for me to overestimate the importance of contracts to you. It would be, there's not a way I could do it. You run into them all the time. Like I've said, you see them every day. You experience them, whether you know you're experiencing the contract process or not, you do experience them on a daily basis. And it's so important for businesses to be able to have an open way to enter into contracts without interference, for the law to protect them from interference from outside influences, which could interfere with the contract process, to be protected from bad actors who may enter into contracts and not complete those contracts on a constant basis and for reasons that are not on the up and up. All right, so the body of law that covers contracts is fairly extensive. A lot of our focus will be under the UCC, or Uniform Commercial Code, Section 2. That section deals with the sale of goods and the contracts for the sale of goods. So we'll spend some time talking about that as we move forward. But today we're going to do an introduction to contracts and talk about what mutual assent is, or the meeting of the minds. This will cover chapters 9 and 10 in the text, and will move us forward to lay a groundwork for what we'll learn over the next couple of weeks. All right, so without any more, we'll get into the main parts of the slide. All right, so common law is where most contract law comes from. The states will normally have their basis within common law of contracts. Has been around for, common law of contracts has been around for a long time. We can trace back into Old English common law. There was contracts that were talked about and how things worked when someone was on someone's property, how they rented that property, those type of things. Patents and copyrights, as they came about, that being established, what property is within those. And you can even go further back to contracts and how they were set up with agreements that would be, a handshake agreement for someone to use property. If you go back into times that are written in ancient history books and those type of things, where someone allows a group to, live upon their land for part of the crops or things along those lines, that those type of contracts were still a form of contract the same that we see them today. So contracts in and of itself, the actual act of entering to a contract is not changed. We have words we describe it with now that may not have been around at the time. We have laws that pertain to those, but there were still laws even then that pertain to it. Contracts have been important to the functioning of mankind, humankind, for so long that it's just, we just do those. We do it a lot of times without even thinking. And so it's important to get an understanding of it, how it applies to business, how important it is for the contract process to flow unabated by anyone from the outside, so that we can, function in business, function in what we need to do. So I mentioned the Article 2 of the UCC. I think I said Section 2, but it's actually Article 2 of the UCC that governs the sale of goods. Its definitions for a sale is just a transfer of title from a seller to a buyer. Goods are any tangible personal property. All right, so personal property is what we look at with Article 2. There are other things that cover land and ownership on that, chattel type ownership, those type of things. But personal property, we all have it. I have a laptop, a desktop computer, tablets that I work with, my phone. That's my personal property. Right, that's stuff that belongs to me that I use for my personal use and for business use and for educational use. They serve several different meanings, but there's something that's covered under UCC Article 2. If I go to buy one of these items to update it, to update my older desktop that I have, if I was to do that, I would do so by entering into a contract with someone for the purchase of a new operating system or a new CPU or whatever I needed to put within my computer, or a brand new computer itself, straight out of the box, brand new. If I did that, I would enter into a contract with them to make that purchase. It could be a simple enter into the contract, make the purchase and nothing else, or it could be something that you set up payments on that you buy as personal property, whatever it may be. It's still covered under Article 2 of the UCC. Article 2, before I move on to the next slide, Article 2 is the framework also of how most states will handle their contracts. And as we study through contracts a little bit more throughout the next few weeks, you'll see where it's tied in, what requirements are there for a contract to, that it must be in writing. It must be a written instrument. Contracts can be verbal or they can be a written instrument. Courts still recognize verbal contracts. They still recognize the old-fashioned handshake contract if the parties can prove that they fully believe that the actions that they entered into and the other people entered into, they were building a contract. With that being said, we get to a certain point where the law will require that we have a written contract to make everything official. And we'll talk about that as we move through. Contracts that work outside the code, general contract law governs those. That'd be employment contracts, service contracts, insurance, real estate, property, sale of intangibles, those type of things. Those are contracts that are not the sale of a personal property that you can touch good. If you think about goods as tangible and intangible, a tangible good is the tablet I use for when I do illustrations on these, or when I draw, I use this tablet to draw with on my computer. That's a tangible good. I can touch it. I can utilize it physically. It's a tangible good. An intangible good would be the purchase of something that you cannot touch, you cannot hold. It does not have a physical presence. All right. So the digital art that is bought and traded, those are intangible assets, those type of things. So that's the difference there. International contracts are covered under a international code. CISG, I believe, is the initial sort without having it right in front of me. They're covered under that. And that is based in the United Nations, and it's designed for contracts and how that came out of it. But it's for the sale of goods for international purchases. To get to a contract and to get to it being a legal contract, we have to have mutual assent. Mutual assent is also referred to as a meeting of the minds. It's where we come from the ground up and get to the point where we agree. The parties will do this by manifesting in words or their conduct that they've agreed to enter into a contract. For it to be legal, we have to have that. That's a part of it. There are pieces of a contract that go into it. You have to have an offer, you have to have acceptance, and then consideration. For once the offer and acceptance is taking place, we're at the mutual assent level, and then that's that agreement. And then once the agreement's done, we have to act upon that contract. All right. So once we act upon the contract, we'll have a contract that's considered executed, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The consideration is what each party is going to exchange, something of a legal benefit that they have a legal right to. All right. So it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary in value. When we think about contracts, a lot of times we think about a contract to purchase an item, a contract that somebody is under to do a service, those type of things. But a contract doesn't necessarily have to be money that is exchanged. It has to be something of legal value, and the party incurs a legal detriment by entering into the contract to make the exchange. A legal detriment is that you take something that is legally yours, you have a legal claim to, a legal right to, you give it up, which puts you in a legal detriment for the other party to give you something of legal benefit that they have a legal right to, and it causes a legal detriment to them to make both parties whole. In a way of looking at it, the consideration is the parties have agreed, they've reached mutual assent, they did consideration, and a consideration is them giving up something but becoming whole again once they receive what the other party has gave up. So that means that in a perfect contract, the items are equal in what's being traded. They are at least to the parties something that they consider making them whole. If it's buying a TV from Walmart or Target or somewhere like that, Best Buy, you're purchasing that TV now to, if it's Best Buy to Best Buy, that overpriced TV is what they, that price they're charging is what they want. That's the legal benefit they want to get. All right? They want to get that from you. That's something you have. It's yours. You earned it, or however you got your money, and they want that. And they're willing to give you that 56-inch TV that's going to cause your wall to sag once you hang it up there in exchange for that benefit. Now, to you, throwing down that $1,200 or whatever it may be, if you buy them out of Walmart, they're a lot cheaper. But throwing down that money for that big old TV so you can watch the Gator game or whoever you're going to watch on the big screen and feel like you're right there at the game, that is an equal exchange to you. So you're giving up a legal benefit. You have your money, but you're getting something that makes you feel whole. Okay, so it makes, not on a metaphysical sense or any of that, but whole in, I didn't lose anything by buying this. All right, so that's what a consideration is. The object needs to be legal that you're working within. For the purpose of a contract, you cannot have it being criminal or anything that could cause a tort or anything that's against public policy. The legality of a contract is based upon the legality of the terms. All right. So we can't contract for something that's illegal and it be a legal contract, a binding contract. For one thing, if you enter into a contract with someone to do something illegal, who are you going to tell if they don't complete their end of the bargain? You're not going to go to court about it. You're not going to try to report it because, well, you were doing something illegal, right? So for a contract to be considered legal and for it to meet those that standard, it has to be a legal act that is happening. All right, capacity, and we'll discuss capacity in detail in a later chapter in later discussion. But capacity in and of itself is that the parties can enter into a contract. They're of age. They do not have mental impairment that could cause them not to be. They're not under the influence of any drugs or anything along those lines. There's a couple other pieces of capacity that we'll talk about. But, that a person fits into what they're doing. If we think about some of the same things when we were talking about torts and how a person can be held liable for it based upon age, based upon mental capacity, those type of things. Contracts work very similar to that. You have to have the capacity to enter into it for it to be legally binding. Someone who enters into a contract and they're not at full capacity, whether it's because of infancy or age. Infancy is anyone who has not reached the age of majority in the area they live in, whatever that may be, 18, 21, or 16 in some cases. If they haven't reached those ages where they can legally enter into a contract, then they're considered not to have the capacity to do so. Then we have express and implied contracts. Now, this was something when we think about this, you want to look at this from the standpoint of an express contract is a contract that we know what it is. It's stated in words, it's written down. We've spoke it out, whatever it may be. That's where we make a statement to someone. And I love to use this illustration because it's about as simple as you can get. You're standing in your yard, your grass is about 4.5 inches tall. Some guy comes by with a lawnmower and he says, "Hey, I'll mow your yard for $25. He made you an offer. Okay, and we'll talk about the offer and all that in a minute, but this is the steps of it. He made you an offer. You think about it. $25 to get all this grass out of the way and I don't have to cut it? Sure. Yeah, I'll pay you $25. Come on in and mow. He comes in and mows, and you give him the $25, everything's good. That was an express contract. You expressed the terms to each other. It was spoken out and it was completed. Okay. So that's an express contract. An implied in fact contract is one where the parties infer their agreement through their conduct. All right. So let's think about this in going shopping at Walmart. And I'm a coffee drinker. I'm not a coffee snob. I just like coffee. All right. So there are some that I won't drink. It's just, I don't like flavored coffees that you can buy, but I buy just the big 100 count, and they just went up to 100 count. I was so happy with the 100 count box of Colombian Walmart, Sam's Choice, or whatever it is. Their brand, great value. The big box of coffee is the pods for a Keurig. If I go in the store, my goal is to buy that. All right. I'm not doing a contract yet, but I'm about to enter into one. And I'm going to do so just purely by my actions. This is not going to be a conversation with anyone. I'm not writing anything down what I'm doing. It's just going to be the implied because of what we're doing. All right. So I go in the store. I get my cart. I go to the aisle that the coffee is on. I see the coffee on the shelf. I see the price. I grab that box, put it in my cart. All right. So in what happened, there was an offer. It was on the tag for what the coffee is, and I've bought it so many times I pretty much don't look at it. I just kind of glance and make sure it hasn't tripled in price or something. But I put it in the cart, and if I need to do other shopping, I do that, whatever. And I begin to make my way to the register when I'm ready to go. All right. So at this point, we do not have a set contract yet. All right. And we haven't finished this contract. It's not executed. I can at any point right now put it back and it implied. I can decide that I don't want it. I'm gonna do something different. But once I get to the front, then I'm showing my acceptance. I have this in my cart. I'm going to the registers. This is where I'm going to pay. I'm implying by going up to the register with this item that I'm agreeing to buy it for the price they set. And if I go through self-checkout, I take the item out of my cart, or actually that big box. I normally use the hand scanner. I scan that price. It comes up. I pull out my debit card, tap it on the screen, and it tells me accepted, and I've bought my item. I have just executed a contract with Walmart without either one of us having a conversation with each other. Not an employee from Walmart other than tell me, welcome to Walmart and have a good day as I was leaving. That was the only discussion that went on. I didn't talk to anybody in the process, but I still completed a contract. There was an offer, the price for the coffee. There was an acceptance, me grabbing it, putting it in my cart. And then we have the consideration when we got up front. I paid for it. I was able to take that item out of the store without them trying to tackle me for stealing a box of coffee. Walmart got some of my hard-earned money that they love to have, and everyone was on an equal basis. Maybe think back to I said it makes you whole. I got my coffee. I'm going to be whole. I'll be good in the morning, good in the afternoon, good in the evening. I drink coffee. So that is, what an implied contract is in, a nutshell. We have the parties to contracts, and the parties sometimes have different obligations. In a bilateral contract, both parties will exchange something of value. They'll exchange promises for it. If you do this, I'll do this. Those type of things. That is a contract of thinking back to the guy coming to mow the lawn. He's like, if for $25, I'll mow your lawn. He comes in, mows the lawn. I give him that $25. I tell him, yeah, I'll give you $25 for doing this. Or if I was to see him with a lawnmower, say, hey man, I'll pay you $25 to come mow my lawn. He does it. Either way, whoever initiates it, we're exchanging promises. In a unilateral contract, only one party makes a promise in it. The other party just seeks that out by their actions and what they do. The most common unilateral contract that we probably see is things like Crime Stoppers, the organizations that offer reward for information leading to the arrest of someone who's committed a crime. That's a unilateral contract, and that is one that the party is rewarded upon completion of doing something. The promise is $10,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of someone involved in this crime. All the person to collect that reward needs to do is make a call, stay anonymous, or whatever, and get the reward. In doing that, they are completing an action based upon the promise of the money for that action. So their consideration is the act, and the other one gives the money. All right, so contracts is to be considered valid, void, or voidable. And these will be important distinctions for you as we move forward. A valid contract is one that meets all the requirements to be a binding contract. You had an offer, you had acceptance, you had consideration. All the pieces to it were legal. Everyone was of capacity to enter into the contract. We did not have any other issues that would make it a contract that could be voided or a void contract. If it's a void contract, we do not have a contract at all. There's not any legal effect to it. We're not going to have someone who is, at a loss for this. We just do not have a contract. One that is voidable is a contract capable of being made void. This takes us to capacity and those type of things. And when we discuss capacity at a later time, we'll talk about the voidability of contracts in that sense. An unenforceable contract is one that a contract for that breach by which the law provides no remedy. If it's an unenforceable contract, that could be one that's unconscionable. There could be other issues going on there. It could cause it to be unenforceable. How a contract is classified. All right, so and I'm going to do this kind of flipped here for the first one. An executory contract is a contract that we're in the process of completing or performing. All right, we're in the process of doing that. A contract for selling goods to someone that's going to be a constant, by month. We send them 500 items for a set price. They pay us, and we're going to do that for 6 months. Well, in month 3, that is still an executory contract. Once we get to the end of it and we've completed all the items and everything's been sold, everything's been paid, we have then an executed contract. This one that's been fully performed by all the parties. Just keep in mind, executed is a past tense word. If you think about it past tense, that means it's done, it's passed, the contract's done, it's completed. Executory is when we're leading into getting to that point, but we've entered into the contract, we're beginning to perform the contract, we just have not fully performed it. Yeah, what are considered formal and informal contracts? A formal contract is an agreement that is legally binding because of a particular form or mode of expression. A written contract would be a formal contract. There are other parts of formal contracts that we can look at. An informal contract is any contract that's a legal contract other than a formal contract. A contract to buy a good, that is a written contract, is a formal contract. That contract, me just walking into Walmart, it's an informal contract, getting my coffee and leaving. That's an informal contract. We didn't go through any steps. We didn't have negotiation. We didn't have any of that. A formal contract is going to involve some negotiation. Most likely, it's going to involve the parties, maybe offers and counter offers, those type of things. Okay, so there's going to be some differences there. All right. Promissory estoppel. Now, you'll hear this quite a bit as we talk about contracts, but it's a doctrine meant to enforce non-contractual promises. Someone who represents themselves in such a way that the other party would believe them to be willing to enter into a contract and act according to that belief. They can be by the court forced to do what they had said they were going to do. All right. So a promise made under circumstances that would lead the promisor reasonably to expect that the promise would induce the promisee to take definite substantial action, and the promisee does not take this action. Things that can cause this to happen: the relationship of the parties. Someone you've done business with before, they act in the same way they always have. That was enter into a contract, and other times under their circumstances. Someone that you have high trust in, that you believe would, by their actions and what they said, they have made a legally binding agreement with you, and you acted accordingly. All right. If the court can see that, and you can prove it in court that you acted accordingly to that promise, and you can show that that promise was of such magnitude or of such circumstances that it seemed like it was a contractual agreement, then the court can force them to fulfill the part of the promise that they had made, even though they did not intend to enter into a contract. If promissory estoppel is used, normally one party didn't intend that contract. They just did not handle the way they were describing what they were going to do. It was not, a lot of times, not something nefarious that they were doing. It just, they did not intend to enter into a contract, but made such statements as to seem to the other party that they were willing to do that. Quasi contracts and restitution. A quasi contract is one, it's not based on a contract, but it's imposed to avoid the injustice. Similar to what promissory estoppel is, it's a court imposed contract to avoid some type of injustice. Restitution can be called upon this, so the court can bind a party to restitution to make sure the other party is made whole. The biggest point with this, whether it's a promissory estoppel or a quasi contract or restitution, the point behind this is that in contract law, we do not look to give compensation in the way that we did with torts. Remember, in torts, there was compensation for lost wages, those type of things. You have compensatory damages and punitive damages that covered different things and could be exuberant numbers. In contract law, we just want the parties to be made whole. We get halfway through a 6-month contract, and maybe it was a prepaid contract. We paid $3,000 for the distribution or the delivery of 500 widgets, and we only received 250 of those widgets. So we still have $1,500 worth of widgets that need to be delivered to us, but the party that is delivering the widgets does not deliver on the rest of it. We're not looking to cause any exuberant amount of harm to them monetarily. Contract law doesn't do that. Contract law would step in and say, okay, they either complete the contract by delivering the goods that were agreed upon, or restore the $1,500 that's left to the other party so that party's made whole. So that once we get done, the parties are back to where they were before the contract. If it's an issue where a breach or things along those lines, It is to get them to the point that as if the contract had never happened. A person that's unjustly enriched at the expense of another is subject to liability and restitution, and they can be required to restore the reasonable value of the benefit received. Notice the reasonable value of the benefit received is just to make the other party whole, not to, make them rich, but to make them whole. All right, so that is, or was chapter 9. I'm going to pause this real quick. All right, and so we're back for chapter 10. And with chapter 10, we're looking at what mutual assent is, that agreement. All right, so what does that agreement mean? We're going to look at the essentials of an offer. We've gone over some of that. So a lot of this is going to be review. This means this will be a faster presentation. The duration of what offers can be, what the acceptance of an offer is. All right, so we're going to look at the first two pieces of the contract, the offer and the acceptance. This is when we get to the point of mutual assent, right? We have an offer, we have acceptance. All right, so let's look at that. Each of the requirements for a contract are essential to its existence. Mutual assent is so basic that it's considered an agreement. A rule of thumb: all contracts are agreements, but not all agreements are contracts. Sometimes you have to look at how an agreement is stated and what the book is saying or what is being done to decide if there's a legally binding contract there, if it's just an agreement among the parties. If we were all meeting in class and we decided, somewhere in class that, after class, and where my classroom normally is right there at Blunt Hall at the downtown campus, I can see a Dunkin' Donuts that's right down on the corner. And I decide, hey, let's, we're all going to meet. We'll go for coffee or whatever. Y'all can ask questions or, whatever it may be. Or we go out in the little balcony area that is set up there at Blunt Hall, for coffee or something to talk about the class. Well, anybody who doesn't want to go, they're not required to go. It's just an agreement we make to go. There's not any legal ramifications for someone who does not show up. They're not going to be held to have to restore anything because there wasn't anything agreed to be exchanged. It was just an agreement among a group to do something, and some of them could not do it for whatever reason. All right, so that was still an agreement, but not a contract. But any contract that we get into is an agreement because parties have to agree on the basics of the contract and what they're going to do from their end of the contract. So an offer is an indication by a party that they're willing to enter into a legally binding contract. All right, they're putting an offer out there. It could be an offer to a specific business or individual, or an offer in general. When a sales circular comes out in the old days of newspapers, I mean, they're still around, but most people don't read them anymore. But you would get circulars that talked about different sales that were coming out. Each week, Winn-Dixie, a lot of your independent grocers, they put out a weekly flyer that goes in local newspapers where they're at, talking about the sales they have. Those are offers. That's an offer to entice you to come into the store to make a purchase and then enter into that contract of by making the purchase, accepting the offer, going up and paying for it, that type of thing. That is still an offer. That's a willingness on their part to enter into a contract. Or any offer is considered a willingness to enter into a contract because you're saying, I have this and I want to give you this. The manner in which the parties usually show mutual assent is by an offer and acceptance. One party makes a proposal, the offer, that would be the offerer, by words or conduct to the other party, who agrees by words or conduct to the proposal, the acceptance. The offeree makes the acceptance, and then we have mutual assent. That is when we have agreed between the parties, we've come together, our minds have met, and we're willing to move forward in the contract. What we need in the contract, of course, is communication, a show of intent, definiteness in the terms. All right, so definitiveness in the terms. And definitiveness in the terms is that we're going to have be clear enough to provide the court with a basis for giving an appropriate remedy. A big part of contracts is making sure that the language is to sort that you do not have to explain it. The last thing you want to have to do is be in court and explain what you're talking about in a contract. Plain language, easy to understand. Yeah, and I know almost every contract you enter into, when you read contracts for purchase of items, a lot of times it is full of legalese. But the simple terms of a contract, especially between parties that are not, big monstrous corporations, a lot of times that makes it easier for all parties to understand. You clearly state your intent, the objective of what you're trying to do here. And when you communicate that, you do so in a manner that all the parties who you're making the offer to can understand what's going on. Offers tend to exist for a period of time that they are designed to. The lapse of time is whatever time is specified, or a reasonable period of time. A reasonable period of time can be based on a case-by-case basis. Certain things have, a reasonable expiration date of when they can be completed. If you're selling perishable items to someone, there's a reasonable expectation of whatever that shelf life is for that perishable item. That would be the end of the offer. And likely before that, because, well, you don't want to sell them something that may be bad by the time it gets to them if there's shipping involved. You can set that. When you hear limited time offer, when there's a sale going on, that's exactly what they're saying. You have to respond within a certain amount of time. When you're making an offer to someone, you can say that acceptance of this offer needs to be made on or prior to such and such date, such and such time. And then we'll talk about how you can guide how they do that. The revocation of an offer is something that can be done at any point before the acceptance has been transmitted. And once the other party has said they will accept, you can no longer revoke the offer unless it is something along the lines of an option contract that binds the offer to keep the offer open for a specified period of time. But for the most part, in regular contract offers, you can revoke it until such point in time that they have accepted that offer. You have what's called a firm offer. That's a merchant's irrevocable offer to sell or buy goods in a signed writing that ensures that the offer will not be terminated for up to 3 months. That's one where you had a written offer given to someone set for a set period of time. If there's some reason by statute, by law of the state that you cannot revoke the offer, then it would set in there. And the irrevocableness of a unilateral contract. Any unilateral offer may not be revoked for a reasonable time after performance has begun. So once the person has begun to do what they were asked to do by the promise, then you can't revoke it because they have begun. They've shown they agree to enter into it. Then that's basically the acceptance, and their performance is showing their acceptance for that. Promissory estoppel. Once again, we're talking about promissory estoppel. A contractual promise that binds a promisor because they should reasonably expect that the promisee or that the promise will induce the promise offeree to take action in reliance upon it. Rejection is another way that an offer can be terminated. That is rejection of the offeree saying that, no, we do not want this. That would terminate any power of acceptance from their part. And then a counteroffer. If they come back with a counter proposal or counter offer, then that would terminate the original offer. The way an offer works is I make an offer to sell you an item for $500. You come back and say, well, I value it at $450. Would you accept that? That's a counter offer. My original offer no longer exists because you've rejected it by saying you won't pay that, but you will pay $450 for it. All right, so that counter offer is a rejection in and of itself that terminates the original offer. Then we have death or incompetency of the party who made the offer or the person who the offer is made to. Destruction of the subject matter. If I'm wanting to sell you fireworks for a 4th of July celebration, but a fire breaks out and all my fireworks prematurely turn into a sparkly sky, then I can't sell them to you anymore. So that would terminate the offer. And if it's something that's illegal, once again, we get back to illegal. If the subject matter, the purpose of the contract is illegal or the offer is illegal, that terminates that offer. It cannot be legally binding in that sense. Now, past the offer, we get to acceptance. So we were talking about the offeror. Now we're talking about the duties of the offeree. The offeree looks at this and, their acceptance is a positive or unequivocal expression of a willingness to enter into a contract based on the terms of the offer. So they're saying, yes, I'll enter into that contract with you based upon what you said you wanted to enter into the contract. A bilateral require some type of overt act. Unilateral, they can just refrain from acting or act as requested. A unilateral contract could say, okay, if you'll quit smoking, I'll pay you $200. Well, if they quit smoking, they're refraining from doing something that, as long as they're of age, they're legally allowed to do. And the other person would pay them the money once they proven that they've quit, or an action that you're asking someone to do, report a crime and let it lead to a conviction. Then that's, the other way that they would do that. How they're communicated. There are several ways that you can look at communication. It's generally whatever type of communication is acceptance in through what we do. So think of acceptable ways we communicate. We can communicate through mail. All right, there are still mailboxes in front of people's houses. We can communicate that way. We can communicate through email. We can, in some instances, through text. I have accepted offers through text. I get an offer every so often for refills of my medication. Walmart says, "We'll refill your medication if you'll just respond fill." When I respond fill, I'm accepting that offer that they've given me, and then I go down, receive my item, and pay for it, and we complete that contract. Once again, a contract that doesn't fit the normal way we think of it, but because of how things have changed over the years, technology advance is still part of a contract. Just 1 second. All right, I'm back. So, talking about that general rule of acceptance and what it is, you can stipulate how they accept. You can say that the acceptance can only be through an email to an email address, but acceptance is based upon general ways that acceptance can happen. There are some rules that go into different types of acceptance, but in general, just you can stipulate it, or it can be by any means. That is general acceptance. They must communicate their acceptance in a bilateral contract, of course, in a unilateral contract, by doing or refraining from doing what they've been asked to do. Silence as acceptance. Silence or inaction does not indicate acceptance of an offer unless by custom, usage, or course of dealing, such silence does operate as acceptance. And that can be because we had previous dealings. If I've bought from a company for my business for the last 2 years and they continue sending it to me, even though there's not anything that, we're negotiating or anything, they continue to send it to me. I continue to pay for it. My inaction is my acceptance to continue in that contract. It works as an acceptance because it's just our normal way we've been doing things. Our normal course of dealing that we've done has been that way, and so it works. If there's a stated policy that to accept all offers unless notice is given, then that is another way that silence works in that. You can have stipulated provisions on how acceptance will be done. You have to communicate it in the way that the offerer states in the offer, then authorized means. The restatement of contracts and the code provide that unless an offer provides otherwise, acceptance is authorized to be made in any reasonable manner. What is a reasonable manner? Once again, we have mail, email, text can be considered reasonable, and in-person acceptance can be considered reasonable, those type of things. All right. how it can be communicated in an unauthorized means. That acceptance is effective when received, provided it was received within the time within which the authorized means would have arrived. All right. So, if you state email and they, real quick send a text so they can make the timeline, they've technically accepted the offer, and you would have to, kind of be a stickler for rules and, really not want to work with them if you decided that. It could be that, there was an issue that happened for why they could not respond with email. The internet was down in their building, so they had to send it by text or whatever, and whatever reason could go into that. Then acceptance that follows a prior rejection is not acceptance. That rejection ended the offer. So if you think back to when we're talking about the offer and what constitutes the offer and what acceptance is, once they reject or counter offer, that offer doesn't exist anymore. So if a rejection has come through, the offer E has rejected it, then the offer is not there. They can't go back and accept it. It's too late at that point. We now have to go back through the process again. All right. And so real quick, this little diagram here, communications by the offerer and communication by the offeree. The communication by the offerer is an offer and the revocation of the offer. They're effective at the point they're received by the offeree. All right. So at what point they're received. There's not anything else, just when they're received by the offeree. When it creates power to form a contract and terminates an offer is what they do. All right. So in communication by the offeree, when they're communicating, rejection is when the rejection is received by the offerer. Same way with a counter offer, it has to be received by the offerer to be effective. And acceptance after a prior rejection, they would have to be received by the offerer, and only if that rejection, if received before rejection, forms a contract. All right. The one I skipped over is acceptance. Just in general acceptance, we have what's called the mailbox rule that exists in contracts. The mailbox rule is that, and it's based upon the way that things will be placed in the mail and given a stamp and those type of things. If you ever received a letter in the mail, you notice there's a stamp from post offices, those type of things. The mailbox rule was designed for cases where there was a stipulated end date on the offer that acceptance must be received, as long as the offeree put the acceptance in the mail prior to the end date of the offer, then it was still considered an acceptance, and that forms a contract at that point. In acceptance after a prior rejection, let's say that you send a rejection by mail. Just to explain that a little bit further, how it could work, you send an objection by mail or even email. And as soon as you do that, realize that you did the wrong thing, you turn around and send a text message, which tends to go a little bit faster than email, to the person saying, hey, please disregard the email that's coming in. I accept the offer based on those terms. That would then be something that can be done as long as it arrives to the offerer prior to that rejection arriving to the offerer. If the objection comes first and they read the objection and they see it, then they're within their rights contractually, under contract law to not go through with the acceptance when they receive it. All right. That is a basis for contract law.